The Caterpillar 24M by Norscot comes in the usual Caterpillar style box. It's quite a big box for this model. There's some information about the model, but nothing at all about the real machine. And if you get the model out, then we'll have a look underneath and see if we've got the dreaded ties securing the model, which means there'll be a battle in store to remove them. Let's have a look, and yeah, there we are. Okay, I'm just going to take 10 minutes to get the model out and I'll be back in just a second. So let's start by having a look underneath the model. There's a fair effort to model some of the transmission components on the rear axles, and if we move over and look at the circle, you can see there's some detailing underneath of that, and the complicated mechanism at the front axle has been reproduced also. Here's a close-up of the front axle, and you can see the hydraulic hoses to the cylinders are painted, so really it's quite a good and detailed rendition. But when you pull back, the tyre tread pattern is not so convincing and looks a bit toy-like really. Sideways on, things look better, and you can see the plastic wheel hubs have got wheel nuts detailed. And you can see here there are plenty of grab rails and lights detailed on the body. At the back, the ripper assembly is mostly metal, and with some nicely formed teeth, and above that we can see the grille on the engine and some painted lights. Detail around the cab is fine, perhaps the handrails are just a touch fat, and the beacon light on the roof is certainly big. Things in the area of the mouldboard and the circle are pretty good. Perhaps the detail isn't the sharpest and crispest, but at least it's a fair rendition. One thing about this model is, although it doesn't look it, there's actually quite a lot of plastic used. The nosing at the front, the bits of the front structure on the sides, the back of the mouldboard is all plastic. The roof of the cab, in fact nearly all of the cab, and the handrails and the landing, you can see they're quite squeezy. I think the top of the model is plastic, although it's a bit harder to tell. All the grab rails are plastic, and the cover of the wheels and the wheel hubs, all of these items are plastic, although the colour match is pretty reasonable. Let's now play around with the features of the model. The first thing to notice though, it's actually really quite large, obviously reflecting the size of the real machine, because this is classed as a mining grader by Caterpillar and it is the biggest in their range. It pushes along quite nicely, the wheels turn well, and you can articulate it and steer the front axle to produce some interesting looking poses really. The rear axles have floating kind of a suspension, so you can see they're pivoted and move quite a lot, so there's a good range of movement on those. And the ripper mechanism at the back can fold down and fold up. It doesn't fold up tight because the hydraulic cables used in the model kind of restrict its movement just a little bit, but it's quite effective. The front axle is quite a complicated piece of modelling. The steering is pretty good. You can get really quite a reasonable angle on the steering mechanism, and the angle of oscillation of the whole axle up and down is very good. Big range of movement on the front axle there. Not so good is the mechanism for tilting the tyres, so although the cylinders are modelled, it's really too stiff and doesn't move very much at all. The other aspect of the steering is the articulation between the front and the back of the machine, and this works quite well on the model. A couple of cylinders control it, and there's a reasonable range of movement. So let's turn to the business end of the machine, which is the circle and the mouldboard. The mechanism that holds the circle is a bit complicated, like it is on the real machine, but you can use it to both lower the circle and also put an angle of tilt on it, so that the blade is tilted. It's a bit stiff on the model, as you can imagine, and as long as you're careful not to break anything, you can set any pose that you would like. The blade itself rotates on the circle quite nicely, and you can jiggle it about a bit to get it how you want it, and the mouldboard also moves transversely side to side, so you can put it at different offsets, and it rotates forwards and backwards as well. One last feature of the model is a bit unusual for Norscot, and that is that the cab doors open. You need a sharp pointer or something to get them open, but watch what happens when you shut it. Just make sure you don't put your 1:50 scale hand in the doorway, because it will chop it clean off. The guys at CranesEtcTV sometimes like to show off a little bit, and here's one of them displaying some muscle power to lift up the front axle. If you'd like to try this yourself, please at least follow the good health and safety example here and make sure you're wearing a hard hat. All things considered, the Caterpillar 24M motor grader by Norscot is a good effort with a good blend of detail and functionality, and it's recommended.